Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Joe Sandiego here, along with Ben Schneider and Adam Lemery, our supercar expert. We got a lot to talk about, including the Formula One, a thrilling Spanish Grand Prix. And we want to first start out by thanking our Patreon subscribers, calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You too can invest in the Grid Network through Patreon or buy me a coffee, a one-time contribution to help us stay on the air, especially as we got some race coverage coming up with the Xfinity race in Portland, and of course IndyCar once they come to Portland, and the entire season plus next weekend's big weekend of motorsports. But first, we got to start with the Spanish Grand Prix. What a race. Ben, that was just something where it looked like, as we said yesterday, it could be just Leclerc driving away, cruise to victory, but that was not the case.
Well, I called it on yesterday's show, didn't I? I said I'm changing my pick from Verstappen to Leclerc. So Verstappen fans can rejoice because that means I'm going to have jinx Ferrari. What can go wrong will go wrong. Leclerc looked set for a surefire victory today. And then Ferrari happened. The engine lets go, and he's got nothing to show for a great run and what should have been a great weekend. And along with Leclerc's retirement, Carlos Sainz spun off. He did recover to finish fourth, but still didn't maximize everything he could have gotten out of the weekend. And so Verstappen was able to take the win. After he got around George Russell, had a great run this weekend for Mercedes. They look like their upgrades have certainly improved the handling of that car. So we'll see what they can do going forward. He got around Russell and then obviously had some team orders with Sergio Perez. A little bit of controversy there. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. But first, Joe, I want to start with you. Every race Max Verstappen has finished, he's won. So is the momentum right now firmly with Red Bull and Verstappen, especially in light of what Ferrari did today?
I have to say yes, especially when you look at what Max Verstappen has done. He has been outscoring them when it comes to each and every race, the last three races. Ferrari, it just seems like Carlos Sainz is not 100% since resigning. Just spinning off, going out. Today really hurt the team. Along with Charles Leclerc having the engine DNF, still, we saw Max Verstappen. He had his issues, fell back, but he still managed to score a point and then eventually get around George Russell and Perez to get that win. Perez, he is running strong. So both Red Bulls are running strong. They're both going to, I think, continue running strong. Where Ferrari, they need to do something because you can't afford having Carlos Sainz out of the picture in midfield land. What we saw today with George Russell was textbook why you want two teammates running well. George Russell had the lead. You had the two Red Bulls there. They couldn't get around him. They used a pit strategy. Max Verstappen first. Then here comes Sergio Perez much later on. And at the end, both of them got around George Russell for an easy win. So when it comes to Red Bull, they're running strong. Both cars. They're both scoring podiums. Max Verstappen, yes, he did get team orders to get around Sergio Perez, but he was on much fresher tires. He would have gotten around no matter what. So clearly, I see Red Bull, they got the momentum. Ferrari, they need to really try to regroup together because this race weekend, granted, what happened to Leclerc was out of his control. They can't afford this to happen because in the grid rating for F1, Verstappen has overtaken Charles Leclerc now.
Well, if you want to win the F1 World Championship in the drivers, in the driver standings and in the constructor standings as well. You're going to have to get around Red Bull. That team looks solidly strong as we head into the Grand Prix of Monaco next weekend, and that is a street course, a very tight street course in the Principality. And it's also Charles Leclerc's home race. Well, Ferrari needs to get something going right. Otherwise, we could see a runaway in both the driver standings and the constructor standings. Right now, Max Verstappen is on top of the world in F1, and last year he won the F1 World Championship. It looks like he could do it once again.
He is certainly in very good shape at the start of the season. Verstappen has 4 wins compared to Leclerc's 2 with a long season still ahead. Only 22 races. Of course, the Russian Grand Prix won't be replaced as was initially announced. Now, Ferrari reliability ruined what would have been a perfect response to Red Bull's victory in Miami. Sainz is still struggling with a poor start, and then obviously his off-track experience today, although he did recover to a nice 4th-place finish, still didn't maximize the output that he possibly could have given the Ferrari team today. So, Joe, how would you gauge both Ferrari and Red Bull right now as the top 2 teams? Who do you think has the edge at this point?
I would say still it looks like it's going to be Red Bull since they have both vehicles running up front. Reliability is their weakness, though. We saw that with Verstappen, the DRS glitching out where it wasn't opening all the time. Yes, it was making it where it was buying the time for George Russell to stay ahead. I truly feel if that DRS issue was not in place, Verstappen would have gotten around much faster, much earlier, and this would clearly be a bigger runaway effort. When it comes to Ferrari, they have a fast car. They got the pace with that vehicle. The big problem I see with it right now is with the Ferrari team, it might be just sort of that lack of confidence compared to Red Bull. Red Bull, they are coming off a championship season with Max Verstappen in one of the most epic seasons where they beat 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes, with a last lap pass. Can't be any more clutch than that. Ferrari has not had that kind of experience in a long time. They've just been hoping, let's try to get some points, maybe a podium finish. Now let's try to get wins. I think the pressure's starting to build on them. I think it's starting to test the team at Ferrari, especially this is a younger team. Leclerc, Sainz, he's been around a while, but he's just not performing at the level he usually shows. So I'm really gauging that right now Red Bull, they have the better team. They have the experience. Ferrari, when that car is fast and it's up front, it's hard to beat, but I don't think they have the experience level as Red Bull right now.
And speaking of Ferrari, we have a question in the chat room from A Day in the Life, who's quickly become one of our regulars. Thank you for your continued support of this channel. Did Ferrari re-sign Carlos Sainz too early? I think it's worth remembering that Sainz actually beat Leclerc in the head-to-head battle in Ferrari last season, so he certainly had a solid year. Leclerc looks like he's a championship contender. We know how talented he is, and for Carlos Sainz to draw a level with him and even beat him last year, I think proved that he deserved an extension at Ferrari. Obviously, it's been a tough start to the year. Everybody goes through slumps at some time. I think we have to reevaluate where he is maybe when we get to the summer break, and then we can maybe start to ask that question. But, only 6 races into the year, there's still plenty of time for Sainz to bounce back. He had a great run in Monaco last year with a Ferrari that certainly was not as competitive as this year's Ferrari is, when the engine doesn't fail, of course, like it did today for Charles Leclerc. But I think get back to me on that one in a few races, and we can maybe reevaluate where he is from there. Day in the Life also says Verstappen will sweep Monaco with a pole, fastest lap, and win. That is certainly a bold prediction. We'll have to wait and see, obviously, in 7 days' time if that all comes true. Now, George Russell played a big role in today's race while he was leading. It was a great start, and it seemed like he's the leader for Mercedes at this point as Hamilton's win streak in Spain came to an end. And, of course, Russell has been out qualifying and outpacing Hamilton on most race weekends all year. At one point after the first lap contact with Kevin Magnussen, Lewis Hamilton even suggested retiring the car to preserve the engine for a future race weekend. So, Adam, were you surprised that Hamilton not only is in a position where he doesn't appear to be the team leader at Mercedes right now, but the team even had to motivate him today to stay in the race and get back in the race when he clearly had an opportunity to score some points? He ended up finishing fifth. It seems out of character for Lewis. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I'm surprised. I'm surprised. That Lewis said that. Yeah, he did have a first lap collision with Kevin Magnussen, and credit to George Russell. What he did against Max Verstappen was really, really incredible before Max got around him. Holding off the previous world champion corner after corner was really impressive and showed me something about George Russell. He looked very solid in that Mercedes today. And Lewis Hamilton, and we have another comment from A Day in Life saying, I anticipate Lewis retiring at the end of 2022 or 2023. Well, that's a good prediction. He has won 7 world championships. I mean, after F1, what does he want to do? Does he want to come over here and compete, maybe IndyCar, or go to another form of motorsports, or does he just want to enjoy the rest of his life? And potentially, could he do a Tom Brady? Tom Brady sort of retired and then came back. Could Lewis Hamilton do the same thing in a couple of years? We'll just have to wait and see.
Might not even have to be a Tom Brady. He could take a few years away like Michael Schumacher did, and then Schumacher came back, of course, ironically enough, for Mercedes. So we'll have to wait and see. I remember Lewis was in a 60 Minutes interview several years ago after he won his 3rd world championship, and he said he wanted to do it until he was 37. Well, he's 37 now, and he's got 2 years left on his contract, including this year. So he's going to go a little bit past that if he should see the rest of his contract out. I do wonder, though, with this extended calendar, of course, like I said a little bit earlier on this program, I'm happy to see that Formula One's not going to replace the Russian Grand Prix and stick with 22 races, because I think 22 is already starting to stretch it as far as you can. But I wonder if the calendar continues to expand, if we're going to see drivers start to retire a little bit sooner than we've historically seen them. I'm not sure you're going to see very many Kimi Räikkönens or Fernando Alonso's or Michael Schumacher's, even drivers racing into their early and mid 40s. I think that might become a thing of the past if drivers get too burned out from these long schedules. But in Lewis's case, if there's anybody with the drive and determination to do it, it's certainly him. So we'll have to wait and see. Now, in terms of today's race, of course, Hamilton got back up all the way to 4th, and until Carlos Sainz passed him in the closing laps. It's a remarkable recovery drive for the 7-time world champion. Shows that it certainly was worth staying out on track and not retiring to save the engine after the opening lap collision. The next race is in Monaco, where, of course, all eyes will be on qualifying. Last year, Hamilton struggled in this race quite a bit. He only managed P7, and, of course, Charles Leclerc has what many would call a curse here at his home track. You even recall a couple of weeks ago when he damaged the historic Ferrari in that event. So we know qualifying is so important in Formula One. Adam, we'll start with you here. Is Monaco, in light of that, the most important qualifying weekend of the year?
Absolutely, it is. And I mentioned it earlier. This is on the streets of the Principality of Monaco. If you look at it, it's a very tight street circuit. Not a lot of room to pass. So, as you leave the start-finish line, you go into turn 1 and you go up a hill. And we've seen there in previous years, people have crashed out there on lap 1 and have caused a red flag, and red flags there could go for a while. So I think qualifying is going to be a very key to next weekend's race. I think if you start in the first 2 rows, you have a shot to win. So qualifying, yes, going to be a very key part of the weekend in the Principality of Monaco.
Monaco this year, qualifying, this is going to be the one time where you really have to put everything on the line for the pole because it is a track, it's way too hard to overtake, especially with these current F1 cars. This is not like what we see with Formula E. Those cars are more smaller, nimble. These cars are much larger. It's going to be hard to get around. So you're going to be very dependent on pit strategy. And of course, with pit strategy, if you have everyone on soft tires or medium tires, well, you're all going to be really just in a box. So it's going to come down to getting to Q3 and then just setting that fast lap to be on the pole. Really? I think this race is going to be probably one of the more tamer races of the year. I know a day in the life, he's anticipating a more entertaining race. Of course, if I'm wrong, we get a more entertaining Monaco Grand Prix, I'll be more than happy to say that because we all want good racing. But I feel with this race, your 3 outcomes are going to be the pole sitter or the outside pole sitter going to get that clean exit out of turn 1 with the lead. They're going to lead the rest of the way unless you have a pit stop that goes wrong, like what happened to Daniel Ricciardo, which he lost his lead. You have a mechanical issue, which we know both Ferrari and Red Bulls could potentially have. Leclerc has had them. We've seen Max Verstappen had mechanical issues. Or you get weather. When it rains in Monaco, it makes it really unpredictable. Olivier Panis won the race in 1996 when only 4 cars finished that race. So Monaco, this anticipates qualifying to make essentially the big moment where you go out there, lay your first claim into getting that win. Still a lot can happen, but it's not in the driver's hand. It's a lot in the hands of the strategy and your competition.
Yeah, you're certainly going to need a good qualifying run, and obviously pole position is ideal. There is maybe an opportunity. Obviously, of course, there's at least one mandatory pit stop, so you can try to work an undercut or an overcut. That's how Sebastian Vettel beat his teammate Kimi Räikkönen in 2017. Räikkönen was on the pole. We all thought he was set to win the race, but Vettel got him on the got him in the pits. You could maybe say there were some team orders there. Of course, he was in the championship battle that year, but it does provide an interesting dynamic. Of course, it's very difficult to overtake, so that's probably your best opportunity when it comes to overtaking in Monaco next weekend. Next, we'll send it over to our own Matt White for a brief update on WRC.
Championship celebrated 50 years of existence this weekend on Rally Portugal, and a classic milestone produced a classic event. Kalle Rovanperä coming through to take his 3rd victory of the season for Toyota. Went into the weekend leading the championship, which meant poor road position for him on Friday, but he made the best of what he had and came back through the field to lead at the end of the day on Saturday. And he fought off the attentions of erstwhile leader and teammate Elfyn Evans, who finished 2nd. Elfyn's best result of the season, although disappointed not to be going home with the winner's trophy. Could have been a Toyota 1-2-3, but Takamoto Katsuta was beaten on the final stage of the event into 3rd position by Danny Sordo, his first event of the season, and he gets his 6th Rally Portugal podium after pipping Katsuta to 3rd place on the power stage, and would have been Toyota's first 1-2-3 since 2019. But Sordo spoiling their party. His teammates Thierry Neuville and Loic Tanak finished 5th and 6th. Punches for Neuville. He had a broken drive shaft as well on Friday. Tanak also having puncture issues throughout the weekend. Blotted their weekend. They came away with the best they could. Pierre-Louis Loubet finished 7th and highest Ford runner on the weekend. The young Frenchman, his best WRC result, ahead of teammates Craig Breen and Adrian Fourmeau getting his first finish of the year in 9th. Johan Rossell was 10th, and he won the WRC 2 category. Although going into the final stage of the day, he was 11th, and Timo Sunninen was in 10th position before he fell off the road in the power stage. Slightly embarrassing live on television, and a minute lead he had going into that stage, Sunninen. Unfortunate not to come out of the final stage with the WRC 2 victory. What of the 2 Sebastians? There was a lot of talk about Sebastians Loeb and Ogier going into the weekend as they returned after not doing any results since Monte Carlo. Loeb led on Friday, but hit a wall in stage 5, damaging the car, and he was out for the day. He had more technical trouble on a Saturday and did not return. Sébastien Ogier also having issues, punctures, and a very uncharacteristic mistake on Saturday sent him into the trees. He went for points on the power stage, but was unfortunate to come away with 0 there as well. After a stop-start to the season, we are back underway again in 2 weeks' time in Sardinia on the Italian island for the next round 5 of the season. And we've got events coming thick and fast throughout the summer. Sardinia, Kenya, Finland, Belgium, and the Acropolis all to come in the not too distant future. Kalle Rovanperä, though, goes into Sardinia on the spin of 3 round wins. Great start to the championship for the young Finn. Can he keep it going? We'll find out in 2 weeks in Sardinia.
Going to be very exciting to see what happens in 2 weeks with World Rally Championship and, of course, the grid ranking coming up shortly. But first, Supercars Adam Winton, the 3-race weekend is over, and Shane Van Gisbergen, he only got 1 win this race weekend. Cam Waters earning 2 wins. Really impressive effort by Cam Waters and the Monster Energy Ford this race weekend. Now Waters, he has 333 points behind Shane Van Gisbergen, but he's in 3rd place. Yes, we know that seems like a lot, especially 300 points is the max per race weekend. 3 races, that's only 100 points a race weekend. But we're still not halfway. We still got another 15 plus 2 more, so that puts it to 17 races before we get to the end of the season. Do you anticipate Cam Waters? Because after this race weekend, I'm starting to wonder, can he mount a championship effort, a championship drive against Shane Van Gisbergen?
I think he can, Joe, and it was shocking to see only SVG winning one of the races this weekend. But I gotta tell you, Cam Waters in that Monster Energy Ford Mustang proved that qualifying is no fluke. Not our viewers know. Qualifying for all 3 races at Winton were close. Were very, very close. And actually, the last 2 races there, you saw Cam Waters on pole and Shane Van Gisbergen alongside. So now Ford can say they have 3 wins this season, and they're slowly starting to catch hold of Commodores. But Shane Van Gisbergen right now, you still got to beat him. Yeah, Cam Waters won 2 of the races this weekend. But you still got to knock off the defending Supercar champion. There's still a long way to go in the season. So, could Cam Waters catch Shane Van Gisbergen? Sure. But we'll just have to wait and see until the season finale.
The season finale, of course, it's going to be a long season, so it will be really interesting to see. Cam Waters puts in effort after effort. I don't see why Shane Van Gisbergen is going to all of a sudden drop off unless he gets like maybe 1 or 2 DNFs a year. This could be a really interesting championship battle shaping up between the 2 rivals. Speaking about championship battles, of course, Shane Van Gisbergen continues to lead the grid ranking. As you can see here, we had a major shakeup when it came to the grid ranking this weekend with Sebastian Loeb, who was in the top 10 after his horrible weekend where he pretty much went out of the race early on, knocking off that right rear tire. He is out of the grid ranking. Kalle Rovanperä moves up. Will Power, he has also moved up to 3rd place, considering he doesn't have a win yet. But the consistency is right there. Then, of course, Charles Leclerc, a big drop all the way down to 7th. But look at Max Verstappen. He is now in 4th place. And something very historic. First time the top 10 has 10 different countries represented. And first female racers, Jamie Chadwick in 9th place. So very big shakeup when it came to the grid ranking this weekend. And, of course, next race weekend, we have a big race weekend, as we talked about, because we're going to have Monaco for Formula One, Indy 500 for the Indy cars. NASCAR has the Coca-Cola 600 plus MotoGP. They're going to be in Mugello, Italy, and they're going to be retiring Valentino Rossi's number 46. So a big weekend of racing next week. Ben, starting with you, which event next weekend do you think will be the most watched race? Well, which do you believe will be the most watched race, and why?
The most watched race in terms of viewership will be the Coca-Cola 600. In terms of which is the most must-watch race, if you will, I would go with the Indianapolis 500. I think it's the greatest race in the world. I think there might be a little bit of debate between that and 24 Hours of Le Mans. But the last few years, only 2 cars could win at Le Mans. There's 20 to 25 cars that can win the Indianapolis 500 should everything go their way. So I think, the greatest spectacle in racing is certainly what I'm most looking forward to. In terms of which is actually going to get the most viewers, I still think NASCAR will beat it in the primetime slot on Sunday night.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. I think next weekend, I think the Coca-Cola 600 will be one of the most watched races in the world, but you can't count out the Indy 500. And also, I'll throw in the Monaco Grand Prix with this F1 championship battle between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. So I'll say the Coca-Cola 600 and then the Indianapolis 500. It's like Christmas for a motorsports fan across the world. You can have your breakfast in Monaco, lunch at Indy, and your dinner in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's through the crown jewel of motorsports across the world. So happy to see them all back on the same day in 2022.
I've got to say, Adam, I just to bounce off of that, I selfishly as a fan, I love it too, but I'd like to see more. Sorry, do we have some feedback issues here? I'm not sure.
I don't hear anything.
Okay. All right. I'd like to see a little bit more crossover. I love what Jimmy Johnson's doing this year. Obviously, the Indianapolis 500, what Fernando Alonso did several years ago. And I think it would be easier in the future to allow for those opportunities, maybe if Monaco was the week before Indianapolis as it was last year. So, again, selfishly as fans, it's great for us to have a full day of racing action. But, there are some drawbacks to it as well.
Yeah, that was the same when we had Fernando Alonso at the Indy 500. That was huge. And then even when it was on the same race weekend, well, okay, he gave Jenson Button a seat because McLaren didn't have the competitive, but won't be seeing any of that kind of crossover when everybody's on the same day. And it's become more and more rare to see someone even do the Indy 500 Coca-Cola 600 double. I believe Kurt Busch was still the last one to do it.
It's the only one to do it in the last 20 years. That's
In
correct.
the last 20 years.
That's right.
So it's been a long while, but definitely it's just something where we're going to be following. And then I know we got a question in the chat room. Oh, excuse me. How does Jamie Chadwick in W Series rank ahead of so many drivers? I saw, Ben, you had also mentioned too that part of it is per series. She has dominated. She hasn't lost a race yet. So while other drivers going to the full standings that you see, they have had more races completed, but they haven't won them all. I mean, Fabio Quartararo, if he gets a win next race weekend, he could probably most likely jump past Jamie Chadwick. It all comes to how well you dominate your respective series. So it's going to be really interesting to see if Jamie Chadwick, I know she could potentially maybe pull off the perfect season. If she does, she's going to rank really high. But if she was to go out there and just not win any more races, next thing you know, she's going to be dropping down the standings, which makes it really surprising. Will Power, no wins, but he just has the consistency and it's way up there. So it's going to be really interesting to see, and we encourage everyone to follow the grid ranking all year long. I see Day in Life's interesting, which I've been saying I guess a little too often, but
you want to talk about somebody who should do the double. Will Power's your guy. He's driving for a team that has cars in both series, and Roger even told him one time, win a championship in a 500, then we'll talk. That was 4 years ago that Will checked the second part of that off the list. So it's time for Will Power to do the double.
Why not? I mean, Will Power in a stock car?
Penske only has 3 cars. They could enter a 4th as an open car. That wouldn't be an issue.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, that'll be a lot of fun, especially we're not seeing the full field lately where NASCAR 40 vehicles, but with the 36 charge team. So that's been the field size lately, just 36. So that'll be a lot of fun to see Will Power potentially do the double. Now, of course, we mentioned stock cars. They're going to be in Charlotte for the Coca-Cola 600, but of course, they're in Texas Motor Speedway this race weekend for the All-Star race weekend. Kyle Busch, he's on the pole, and he has essentially 20 past race winners and champions of the Cup Series, starting with him. And then, of course, there's going to be 4 transfers, 3 stage winners from the Open, and the fan vote. So 24 in the field of the All-Star race this year. The format this year is a little bit more easier compared to years past. Essentially, you have 4 stages, and the way it goes, the first 3 stages are 25 laps each. The winner of stage 1 secures the pole for the first stage. Stage 2 winner, second place for the final stage. Third stage winner, third place. Fourth place, though, that's going to go to who wins the pit crew pit stop challenge, where all the teams, 4-tire pit stop, fastest one, gets that 4th starting position. The one caveat for all those stage winners and the pit crew winner, if you finish 15th or lower in any of the following stages, you could lose that potential starting spot depending on how the rest of the field works out. So overall, this is going to be a really interesting format for the All-Star race. We're not looking at average finishes or, other different rules. Thoughts on this race format, starting with you, Ben?
I'm a purist, and I'm not typically a fan of stage racing or the All-Star race format. I feel like we change the All-Star race format up every year. They use it kind of as a test session for new ideas and new race formats. I have a really radical idea. I just want to throw it out there. Just start everybody, run 100 laps, and whoever comes across the finish line first wins the race. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds a little bit out there, but I think it might be something that could work and determine who is the true All-Star among all All-Stars. Maybe they should go with that in the future.
Well, to me, I kind of like how, back in the day, you had, for qualifying, you had, when it was at Charlotte, you made a lap, you went in, I believe it was a four-tire pit stop, and then you went back out. I like that idea, and in the pit stop competition, one thing I'd like to see come back is they had this back in the day at Rockingham Speedway here in North Carolina. They had a pit stop competition at the end of the year to determine who is the fastest pit crew. Maybe bring that back in Phoenix, and maybe have the championship force that'll among those who's the fastest pit crew. I mean, and maybe, or have it maybe earn points, to the championship. I mean, why not? I mean, you give more emphasis on the pit crew.
I remember that old Unical 76 pit crew challenge.
Yeah.
I wish they'd bring that back, because that was something where it was Rockingham, so it wasn't the final race of the year, but it was just, okay, second to last, third to last race weekend, opportunity for all the pit crews. The hard part, this was back then in cable, if you had TNN, great, you could watch it. If you don't, well, you just found out who won. But then they moved to the All-Star race when it was in Charlotte, the arena. That was great. I do sort of like where, okay, the 4th stage, you got something to recognize the pit crew. But going back to when it was then the Winston, I sort of just like that simple 3 heats, 2 20-lap heats, and then a 10-lap dash. That's where we had the original double file restarts. Pretty straightforward. The one thing I know, this was just something I found comical when it was the Winston Select. That second heat, they allowed the fans to decide how many cars to invert. So it was between 2, 10, and then everybody. And every year it was everybody. It was like, well, of course, you're going to give the fans, they're not just going to say, I only want to see 2 cars inverted. Who's going to vote for that? But something where the All-Star race, the format does change a bit often. I wish they just sort of kept something in place, because it's easier to follow rather than following new rules each and every year. The one thing we do know each and every year, there's no points really. There's no points for winning this race or wherever you finish. The game in each stage is really to go out front and not finish lower than 15th, especially if you won another stage. And compared to years past, different aero packages have been introduced. tested out here, as Ben had mentioned, different engine packages. We had 1 year in Charlotte where it looked like essentially almost looked like a super speedway race, but not this year. It's just a next gen car at Texas Motor Speedway, which doesn't have exactly the greatest reputation for hosting the most exciting races. Adam, starting with you, could this be an indicator of how the race at Texas Motor Speedway will look like in the fall when we're not doing just a sprint but a full distance race?
Yeah, and to me, I wish the All-Star race was back at Charlotte Motor Speedway. It was, it was the weekend before the Coca-Cola 600. You could camp for 2 weeks there, and I mean, I can remember my mom and I went actually to the All-Star race when it was held at Bristol Motor Speedway. A couple years ago. To me, I wish the All-Star race were back at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Easy on the fans. I think the All-Star race should stay at Charlotte.
I certainly don't disagree with that. It's NASCAR's backyard, and I think it helps give the event a little bit more of an identity when it was the same track every year. I think Texas is certainly one of those wild cards. When we come back in the fall, it's going to be different seasons, so the weather's going to be different. That might play a different factor in terms of the racing that we see. You're also going to have a full field as opposed to only the All-Stars or only the open cars or whatever the case may be that you're going to see tonight. So I think it might give us a little bit of a taste of what we might see, but it's not going to be a surefire thing that we can take data from this weekend and know and be absolutely 100% confident that we're going to be able to use it in the fall, because there's too many variables that might change in the meantime.
Yeah, a lot of changes by the time we get there in the fall, so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens at the All-Star race. One comment before we go to pick a winner from Mike Hilliard. Credit to Sir Lewis, down in P17, but to finish in P5, I got to admit, that was impressive. Very impressive. And of course, in case you just joined us, once we go off the air, you can start from the beginning where we do our full F1 coverage, and definitely encourage everyone to challenge to participate, especially in this next segment. Pick a winner, but it's really just one race.
That's right, Joe. And it's time that we all make our picks for NASCAR's All-Star race in Texas Motor Speedway. Very interesting format. Kyle Busch starts on the pole after they had the qualifying format last night. So that being said, all right, Joe, I'll start it off. I'll start with you. Who wears the cowboy hat and takes home the big prize in the All-Star race in the Lone Star State of Texas?
When it comes to this race, the All-Star race, anything could happen. We could have a crash fest, or we could have the pole sitters that sort of take control of this race, go on, get the win. I'm going to go with that second scenario. I think Kyle Busch, he's going to win that first stage, securing the pole for the final stage. And then that final stage, he's going to go out to get the win. Yeah, there's going to be a competition caution, all-star caution, they're calling it, in that final stage. So that might be what the rails is playing, but I'm going to go with Kyle Busch.
Ross Chastain's been having a fantastic year. Trackhouse are firing on all cylinders. I just think that this might be a good opportunity for them to flex their muscles a little bit and get Ross that big $1 million prize. I'm going to go with Ross Chastain as my pick a winner for the All-Star race.
Well, last time NASCAR raced it in Texas was at COTA, and Ross Chastain won. So, but I'm gonna go out, and I'm gonna say that I'm going Kyle Busch as well. After seeing the pole, after everything that's happened to him and his wife Samantha lately, we're not continuing the momentum and win the All-Star race in Texas.
When it comes down to it, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. We encourage everyone to submit their picks on the chat room as well. Now, one of the big things We got qualifying later today for the Indy 500, the Fast 12. When it comes to qualifying, starting with you, Adam, who do you think is going to take the pole for the Indianapolis 500?
Well, I'm going to go with the driver that was fast all week there at the Brickyard, and this may shock some people. I'm going to say Jimmy Johnson.
That would be a heck of a story if Jimmy can pull that off. I was reading that he sat on the pole for his first Daytona 500, and he could sit on the pole for his first Indianapolis 500 as well. That would be quite a feat as well to go for Jimmy Johnson. It's hard to bet against Rinus VeeKay. Obviously he was the fastest yesterday and was turning laps in the 234 to 233 range, 233 average speed, the third fastest core lap average in the history of the Speedway. I don't think he's going to quite break our Ryan Dykes record today, but he did say he had a little bit left in the tank. It's hard for me to bet against him right now.
Yeah, I'm going with Rinus VeeKay as well. He was just phenomenal yesterday, and he always seems to run pretty fast at Indy. Just needs to put it together for a win, but I think he could put it together for the pole. A couple of comments from the chat room. Mike Tiller, I vote for Kyle Busch. So for the All-Star race, I don't know if they didn't like because Landon Castle. Is Landon in the Open?
I suppose he could win the Open, and then
He could win the Open.
And there's the fan vote as well. So it would take a perfect storm of events to happen, but it's certainly, you never know what's going to happen in these exhibition races. I applaud a day in the life for thinking outside the box a little bit, and we'll see what happens.
He's outside the top 10, so double points if he gets Landon Castle. I almost feel that should be an extra bonus point for that. And then a day in the life VeeKay for pole. So it looks like it's going to be all.
Man, I'm outnumbered. I'm outnumbered. Wow. Okay. I'll be on an island all by myself.
It's going to be really interesting to see qualifying course later today, the All-Star race later today as well. I know we're going to go off the air, but we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Be sure to visit our Patreon page, support the Grid Network, help us stay on the air like Con the Show, Mark and Robin have done. So we so appreciate everything they have done for us. And of course, buy me a coffee. You want to do a one-time contribution that includes contributing, buying a coffee for your favorite on-air town, such as what Edward, Amber, and Zach have done. Thank you all so much. And of course, public.com, the stock markets, social media homepage. There you can go there, use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market, meet friends, make new friends, and really get yourself educated when it comes to the stock market, not just going there blind without a clue what to do. And use the referral code GridNet, which will get you free stocks from public.com. So overall, it's going to be a very exciting race weekend.
Just one thing before we go about Landon Castle. I just checked the starting lineup for the Open. He starts 11th tonight in Aspire Motorsports car. So it's certainly a tall order just to get into the All-Star race, and then to win it would be one heck of a story. But it is not outside the realm of possibility. He is in the Open tonight. We'll see what happens.
It's going to be really interesting. Now I'm almost tempted to follow, okay, what does Landon Castle do? If he gets in that All-Star race, I'm going to be legitimately probably very interested to see how it turns out. For Adam Lemery, Ben Schneider, I'm Joe Sanriego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.